Hi everybody, I'm Caroline Best of the Tao of Horsemanship. Welcome back to Everything Horses and More video. Aww. Love you, Baba. Today we're going to be talking about reactive and overreactive horses. What usually causes it and how to fix it. So we're going to be moving ourselves down to Lovey's stall because Lovey does not like plastic bags. So we're going to talk about all of this. Most specifically, I would love for Lovey to do what Zor's doing. Most specifically, when we are dealing with a reactive or overreactive horse. In my experience, I've learned to identify 3 specific areas that attribute to the behavior. And one is it an object that the horse is afraid of, like the fan or the box behind Sabrina, which Lovey's gonna be looking at. Is it stimuli? That's the second. Is it stimuli? This is stimuli. This is stimuli. So it's not necessarily a bag, show Lovey, right? It's the noise, it's the motion of it, it's everything together that bothers her. Or is it an environment? Maybe it's a place or a space or a surrounding or an environment that your horse just can't stand. So when we can identify, and that's really important, identify which of it. And sometimes it's all 3. Sometimes you're riding and it's the environment, might be a new environment and the horse isn't comfortable or experienced. And then on top of it, everything starts to bother your horse, right? Oh my gosh, all of a sudden it's afraid of, people riding by or dogs or commotion. And so we've got to start identifying what's causing the behavior. And when a horse is overreactive, reacting to everything in that particular situation that I just mentioned, then that is when your horse is definitely overwhelmed, or as we call it in the equine industry, overfaced. They are totally overstimulated, overwhelmed, overfaced. They can't handle anything else. And that's why everything is bothering them. So let's talk a little bit, hi love, let's talk a little bit about what makes an overreactive horse. So often horses become overreactive. They're not born that way. They become overreactive. And the number one leading cause I have found is because they are overwhelmed or overfaced early on in their years. Whether it's a tragic experience or multiple experiences as a young horse, like wrong handling, bad experiences, or it's bad training that creates the level of extreme reaction in your horse. Again, we've got to begin to identify, and I don't need to know personally where any of the horses come from whenever I've been training horses or retraining horses. It helps when the owner or handler can tell me about the horse's experience if they know the experience. Look at Lovey. I'm coming. She's already thrown, when they want me and they're ready for me, they throw all their gear on the floor. So she threw her fly mask. Usually she throws her halter. Well, hi. What do I have? Your favorite thing, the bag. So we're going to talk more about this. So let me continue my conversation about horses in general and why they're so reactive when that is not how they are hardwired. Horses are not hardwired, designed to be reactive. It's the hardest thing for us to understand, and it's very discouraging and frustrating. Absolutely. Why are our horses so reactive? We create that. If you've studied wild horses like I have, they are so quiet and so calm, and they are hardwired to be quiet so that they can hone in on their senses and sensory awareness, like their hearing, their sight, and their smell. So horses in the wild, they don't want to be distracted. A distraction takes away from their ability to remain safe, and safe through their sensory awareness, like what they hear, what they smell, and what they see. They can't afford to be distracted, you guys. Not to mention, they are hardwired to conserve energy. Yes, I know. To conserve energy so that they can travel up to 20 miles a day. So the only time you'll see horses running is obviously if they're threatened, or stallions might be fighting, or the young are playing. Other than that, they are always quiet. Isn't that interesting? And then we get our domesticated horses who are just unpredictable, flighty, frightened of everything, unconfident, and potentially dangerous. And then they're labeled reactive or overreactive. Remember, they're not born that way, but I'm going to help you understand how they're predisposed. Come here, I understand, you're ready. And what do I mean by predisposed? So, let's talk about the nature of horses. And when you have a young horse, what determines their potential to become reactive or overreactive? That's key. Unfortunately, many of us inherit older horses, so we had nothing to do with how they were developed as young horses. We end up inheriting a horse that's overreactive or reactive. So, what do we do when we have a young horse? What does it mean when we have a youngster that is showing signs of being potentially very reactive? How does that show up, or how would that show up? It would show up in the horse's level of intelligence. Intelligence. I have found predominantly that the more intelligent a horse is, the more sensitive they are to their surroundings and their experiences. The more heightened their senses are, the more heightened their sensory awareness and processing is. I love you. I'm coming. Come on. This horse has such a high work ethic. I love it. I love it. She always shows up for the work. Come here, sweet girl. Thank you. Yeah. I know you're going to sleep. Now you're so content you're going to sleep. I need to bring her out to talk about reactiveness, so that's why I'm haltering her, or we could just stay in the barn today. But let's talk a little bit more about what creates an overreactive or a reactive horse. To me, in my experience, working with thousands of horses, and most of them being restarts, retraining, re-education, and rehabilitation, most of them, and so many others I started as well. It has everything to do with their level of intelligence and sensitivity. And sensitivity is, all horses are sensitive. All horses are, and for many reasons. Horses are sensitive emotionally, and horses are sensitive, in my book, they're sensitive also. The second way that I get a baseline of information is not just emotional sensitivity, but as I just mentioned, their ability to, or their level of, sensory awareness and processing. So just like people, there are different levels of intelligence in people. There are different levels of sensitivity in people. Some people are labeled more emotional, more sensitive, so are horses. Now let's look at what creates sensitivity, especially in the equine. Intelligence creates sensitivity. Emotions create sensitivity. That's the second. And the third would be their level of sensory awareness and processing. It's another form of intelligence. But all three of those areas attribute to their sensitivity level. And if a horse is showing signs of being reactive, they are showing signs, they're telling you that they're intelligent, they're capable of processing information and learning very quickly. It's almost like having an overachiever in a child, like Lovey. And they're also telling you that their sensory awareness is also heightened. And so when we have, this is amazing by the way, Lovey hates bags, but we've been working on this for a long time. We put couple little secrets. We put treats and food in the bag, and so it becomes a really good experience because she associates it with something yummy every time. And I try and keep bags around just in a natural, it's not natural, but trying to make it more of a natural environment for her, that yeah, bags are just hanging around here and there. You're gonna hear it. So when you are, how do you determine if your horse's intelligence? How do you determine their level of sensitivity? How do you know that for sure that what I'm talking about is real? Just use a lot of common sense. Use a lot of common sense. Do some research on some of the science behind intelligence and how it shows up. The science behind sensory processing, how that shows up. Science behind sensitivity levels and how that shows up. So for me, when I see a horse that hones in with their eyes and their ears on an object or an area or a stimuli, like I mentioned earlier in this video, and they just hone in on it, watch their eyes. Watch how they are processing that information and taking it in. You can actually watch them think and try to diagnose, for the lack of a better word, or even problem solve. Think about it. Now, of course, they might be frozen with fear because they're stimulated, which then they're going to resort to either fight or flight. And now you've got your labeled reactive horse. So how do we help that? First, we have to be able to identify. We have to pay attention. How is our horse showing up? If we know that they're pretty reactive to stuff or overreactive to stuff, how can we help that horse? First, we have to understand, like I've been explaining, that overreactive horses, it's actually a good thing. It's telling you this horse is really intelligent. Yes, it's also telling you this horse is pretty sensitive. And to make it even more complicated, it's also telling you that this horse, even the more reactive horses, the really overreactive horses, is telling you that this horse, if it's not a learned behavior now, it's not a trigger, it's telling you that this horse has a higher level of intelligence, for the lack of a better word, in its sensory aware and sensory processing mechanisms. And that all has to do with the nervous system and the brain and the body. And it's kind of like being an athlete. You know, some people are just better, skilled and more talented physically, athletically. Well, some horses and their sensory aware and sensory processing in the brain, it's just a lot quicker. Do you see where I'm going with this level of intelligence? It's just a lot quicker, man. They just look at it and they process it. And some of them just try to diagnose it. So what's the opposite of that? A really easygoing, calm, unaffected, kind of dull horse. They're just not affected by anything. It's like the saying, you know, water rolls off a duck's back. They're like, yeah, doesn't bother me, doesn't bother me. Honestly, all the horses I've worked with like that, they're not very intelligent. They're easy, they're calm, they're good-natured, they're bomb-proof genetically, they're hardwired that way, and they're excellent in so many ways. But they're not very intelligent. I think there's some common sense there that just makes sense the way I'm explaining it. They just don't think deeply, they're not affected deeply, emotionally by things, and they're easier to work with, definitely. The more sensitive horses, the more intelligent horses, oh my gosh, they are definitely more challenging. And this goes back to the Arabian breed. I love my Arabians. Lovey is registered thoroughbred, but as you guys can see, she's got that Arab dish in her face here, in her bone structure. And her lineage definitely dates back to the Arabian bloodlines. Her registration, I can't remember which side, whether it's sire or dam, Lovey's family line, the lineage has that deep dish. So she definitely is related more closely to the Arabian bloodlines. And you either love Arabs or you hate them. They are so intelligent and sensitive. And it can be really challenging and really frustrating. And absolutely amazing when you work with them and you know how to work with them. And so for me, horses get a bad rap. They get labeled so easily for the sake of making us more comfortable and for the sake of us trying to put them in a box and not just figure them out. I wouldn't say we're trying to figure them out by putting them in a box. We're just trying to make them do what we want them to do, instead of trying to figure out why your horse is reactive. And just to give you guys a recap, so many of us inherit horses and inherit their problems when we buy them and purchase them or rescue them or adopt them. We inherit those problems. So if they are reactive, those are usually learned behaviors. That's one classification. The second classification would be your young horse that has had minimal to no handling and definitely no training. And it's usually a weanling or a yearling, and you're getting to know them and you're seeing that they're spooky or they're overreactive. Those young horses that don't have, they're not tainted, they don't have baggage, they are truly more intelligent and more sensitive. How you work with that level of intelligence and sensitivity is either going to make it or break it for that horse. And unfortunately, so many of our horses end up, you know, in their adulthood being passed around, given away. You know, they change owner after owner because they become these really overreactive horses that nobody can handle. They might be super talented, but they're not for beginners or intermediates, so to speak. And it's a shame, because if somebody had taken into consideration what I'm talking about as a young horse before their training and during their training, they would have developed that more sensitive, intelligent horse into an extremely confident partner, and you wouldn't see any of the reactive or overreactive behaviors. So horses really get a bad rap. People are misinterpreting them, misdiagnosing them, misunderstanding them all the time. And so if we have an overreactive horse like Lovey was when I got her, she was 2 going on 3. She had spent a year at the track. She never raced, but the year that she spent at the track, they had completely destroyed her. And the owner of Lovey heard about me rescuing off the track thoroughbreds and contacted me. And I got a picture of him with Lovey on my phone, begging me to take her because she was going to be put down. She wasn't even 3. And she was physically fine. She was emaciated, she had ulcers, but she was not broken down physically. She was emotionally broken down. What they had done to get her to run faster. So of course I asked what was wrong with her? Why didn't she race? And he said she never made the time. She wasn't fast enough. So think what they did to this horse for a year. Every day, these horses in the thoroughbred world get run, breezed, they call it. And they put people like me breeze them. You don't have to be tiny and 90 pounds. That's a jockey. So these horses are ridden every day on that track. And think what they do. They'll do anything, whatever they find upsets the horse, the better it is. And so I'm sure Lovey, to me, is very intelligent, super sensitive, super spirited, has a great personality, and an amazing work ethic. So if she didn't run fast enough, and of course she didn't, because when you watch Lovey move, she moves like an Arabian. She has hang time. She has tons of suspension and action in her movement. I just look at her, and I don't train racehorses, obviously, and I know movement, and I'm like, why would you ever race this horse? She spends more time in the air than she does covering the ground. So they obviously figured out what scared her, this noise, and they used it to create more adrenaline in her to make her run faster. No one told me this, but I know, because I've worked with so many horses, that there should be no reason why this horse is afraid of a bag unless it was created. And even a year ago, Lovey's 10 this year, even a year ago, how many videos have we done? I could not be doing this. A year ago. Look, she's still. So to me, the trauma is so deep, it just gets better in time. It'll never go away. When PTSD. So, how do you help the overreactive horse? Slowly, gradually, you, excuse me, as the person, need to have the mindset. You need to think about what's creating it. And so often, it's not just about the object or the stimuli or the environment. You can't just try to train your horse and make it better around or in those scary places. You can't, because the horse is on self-preservation mode, meaning they're not open to learning. They're too defensive and scared and worried. So their mind is there while you're trying to teach them or retrain them or desensitize them, and they're just trying to survive. You're not going to change anything. And 9 out of 10 times, y'all are taught to desensitize them, constantly flood them with the thing that they're afraid of. And what'll end up happening 9 out of 10 times is these horses are smart. They're going to try to run away from you or run through you. They're going to try and fight and get away. And when they realize they can't do either, and this thing won't leave, they'll shut down and freeze. And when they shut down and freeze, that's when you're taught and told that the horse has accepted it and they're okay now. They've just given up. Blanked out, checked out. You have to be really careful of that. And so when your horse is overreactive to, like I said, a stimuli, an object, or an environment, or all three, you need to consider how to help them. What are the steps? And you need to change your mindset and appreciate and respect the fact that those horses, A, either have trauma, so it's a learned behavior that has made them reactive, or B, they were born genetically predisposed with a higher level of sensitivity and intelligence, and they could be both. And so how do you go back in to the work with them to help them? Oh, well, what? And I know, my sweet girl, and it's always going to be scary. It just gets better. It just gets better in time. The more she trusts you, and the more she wants to take care of you and not hurt you and consider you, it's amazing. It's amazing. Hi, sweet girl. Yeah. Hi, sweet girl. My sweet girl. So you want to look for signs with the head dropping, her looking and checking in and acknowledging the bag, because she's acknowledging what she's afraid of. That means she's thinking about it. That means she's developing courage and confidence. She's not just standing here completely checked out, ignoring it, hoping it goes away. And she's not standing or around and trying to run away from it either. So this is where you want to get. And you just keep offering this opportunity as often as you can, but you don't need to flood her with this. You don't need to desensitize her to the point where you break her down. There's another and better way. And then you test it. When's the last time we put a bag around her? Months ago? Yeah, months ago. And then you test it. All right. Thank you. I hope this has helped. I look forward to comments. Please share your experiences, ask me questions, and may you always be one with your horse. Thank you, Lovey.